This series we're doing here is about the antediluvian civilization. Now, of course, your work isn't so much into that, but it's an important approach to show that at least mankind has existed longer than what we're led to believe. And even the official story, there's something rotten in Denmark because they say, okay, 200,000 years, but oh no, only 5 or 8,000 years of civilization. Of course, they have to backdate that all the time as new discoveries come in. Like in Turkey, we have this.
Göbekli Tepe.
For instance, yes. But my point is, let's say now, for the sake of hypothesis, that there were an advanced civilization prior to the last ice age. Now, an obvious question would be, where are the structures? Where are the traces? Let's say for 20,000 years back, 50,000 years. Could you just, for people who are not so familiar with this natural answer, explain to us why this is a problem?
Well, one problem is that a lot of our high-tech civilization types of things don't survive very well in the archaeological or geological record. And this topic has come up in modern environmental studies. Many scientists are very concerned that our present worldwide technological industrial civilization is having a negative impact on the environment.
Oh, sure.
So many scientists have wondered, well, what would happen if human beings disappeared from Earth today, right now? What would happen to the remains of our worldwide technological industrial civilization? And there have been interdisciplinary studies on this that have been published in scientific publications, but they've also made their way to the general public through documentaries that have aired on the National Geographic Channel, Discovery Channel. One of them was called World Without Us, and it directly addressed this question. So they concluded that our stuff, the remains of our big technological industrial civilization, wouldn't really last very long. It wouldn't take the Earth quite very long to recover. For example, most of our big cities are built on the edges of the ocean or large rivers. And if we didn't have all our water control systems, our dams and our seawalls and things like that being maintained, well, a lot of our cities would be completely destroyed by floods and tsunamis and things like that. We also depend on our fire control systems, so fires would burn throughout our cities and things like that. And as far as our big buildings are concerned, like most of our big buildings are based on steel frame construction, and over time those steel beams would begin to oxidize.
Right.
And then all the concrete and glass would break off and become crushed to just little pebbles that you wouldn't even recognize as the remains of a civilization. And all our metal objects would begin to oxidize, like the cars and the planes and things like that. This stuff really doesn't last very long. I mean, once I was monitoring an email discussion on a scientific discussion group, and the question came up, what if millions of years ago, there was an advanced technological civilization like ours, what would remain of it today? And the scientists were discussing among themselves, and they kind of came to the same conclusion of this more recent discussion that they've been having among environmental scientists about what would remain of our civilization after a few thousand years.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the recent conclusion has been is that after several thousand years, when you wouldn't see very much,
Mm-hmm.
and this discussion I was monitoring some years ago also came to the same conclusion. They concluded that all you might see of some advanced civilization would be some little layers of broken pebbles and glass that you wouldn't even necessarily recognize as the remains of a civilization unless you were studying very carefully.
Right.
So I think that has to be taken into account when we speak about these things.
But did they say anything about how long approximately it would take before all traces are wiped out?
We'd have to go look at either the documentary or the scientific studies, but my recollection, without having it right here before me,
Okay.
is that after about 20,000 years or so, you would hardly see anything.
Huh. But what about plastic? Isn't that supposed to not dissolve?
Plastics will dissolve after some time.
Oh, okay.
I mean, they can last a while,
Mm.
and they become problematic if you're talking about earth fills.
Yeah.
But if you're talking about thousands and thousands of years, plastics will degrade. They have to work very hard to preserve some of the original plastics in museums today.
Oh, okay.
Huh. Like there are museums of material science.
Yeah.
They have to work hard to preserve some of these things.
I see. Interesting.
I mean, they are a nuisance in the short term, but the long term, they do degrade.
Let's hope our ancestors had the wisdom not to produce plastic.
Yeah, so I think that's why a lot of what we see in the archaeological record is stone tools.
Right.
Now in those discussions about the Neanderthals and others, the scientists speculate, well, we're only seeing the stone tools these people left because stone tools preserve very well in the archaeological record. But what if they had clothes made of leather or plant material? They had bags. They had all kinds of stuff that may not have survived.
Good point.